Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug for parents going through the teenage years. I'm Rachel Richards, parenting coach, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 bonus daughters.
Hi there, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness coach, mindful therapist and musician, and mother of 3 teenagers. 2 of them are twins.
Susie, you mentioned this as a topic a while ago because you noticed a number of people in your age group were separating.
Yes, there seemed to just be a few in my circles.
Yeah. Today's episode actually came in as a request. A lady told me that there's someone I have to be careful about this. A lady told me there's someone that is in her circle, in her family circle, who has decided she doesn't want to be married anymore. They have a teenage son who's going into he's 16-ish, 16, 17. And rather than just go for it straight away, they are not going to tell him for 2 years so that he can get through this final stage of his education, and then they're just going to split.
Okay.
And she's told this member of her family, and it's a bit awkward for her member of her family because then she's not supposed to tell anybody.
No.
Which is really awkward.
That can be awkward for her,
Yes.
And, there are opinions on what the best thing to do in that situation is. That's
do you
tricky.
stay together for the sake of the teen? When do you tell that it's all big stuff?
Yeah,
so we'll talk about that.
It's tricky.
And when I started researching this, I read a headline in the Daily Mail: "Why teens are the ultimate marriage wrecker." And
oh my goodness.
this is based on a statistic, which is that the average age of divorce is 45 for men and 42 for women.
Yeah.
And the writer then extrapolated out and said, well, that's when we have teens. So they're marriage wreckers.
Amazing research. Brilliant.
And I read that. Such clickbait. Clickbait is where, they make you want to read the article because you're so horrified.
So ridiculous.
Yeah, the Daily Mail is basically a kind of, it's a rag.
Yeah.
Anyway, we all know having teenagers is hard. But when I actually looked at the numbers, most people, the biggest spike is in the 20s for marriage breakdown, and it's in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's not when you've got teenagers.
It's never to do with your kids.
It's not
your
kids.
relationship, and your kids maybe are the catalyst.
Correct. So we'll come on to all of that. And it's a sprawling topic, but we'll talk about how to spot if you actually should be working on yourself rather than divorcing, because some relationships really don't work and they shouldn't be together.
Yeah, absolutely.
How to go about talking to your kids about it, and the key things that you can do to separate in a way that affects your teenagers as little as possible.
Yeah.
And I've had some amazing help from listeners, so
Amazing.
thank you everyone.
Brilliant.
Before we start, right, nuggets, should we do a nugget?
Yeah, my nugget today is, so my eldest has gone off to university, so that has lots of things involved in that for me and for him and the rest of the family. It's an interesting time, mainly positive. It's really exciting for him, really excited for him. So he's not very far away, which also makes a difference psychologically as well. And he had actually not forgotten, there was something he didn't think he'd need, and then he did need. So he said, could you bring it up? And I was like, yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Just pop by.
I'd love to.
And
I was waiting for you to ask.
It was right at the end of Freshers Week. So it was right at the start, and he was busy with Freshers. And I said, I won't stay. And is it all right if your siblings come? Because they were like, oh, can we come? And if not, that's cool. We'll just, I'll hand it to you over in the car park we'll come another time. But he was like, no, it's fine. I am busy, but it's been really nice to see you just briefly. So we went up. It then turned out that he wasn't busy because he didn't want to go to the event that was on. It was a formal ball, which is not his bag. So he did not go. So he had a bit more time than he thought. And anyway, long story short, we were sitting having a drink in the cafe, and we were mucking about a lot, and there was a lot of banter and a lot of it was really fun.
This is with his family.
Yeah, and he just he breathed and he went, oh, it's really nice. I can be as inappropriate as I want.
Oh, I love it.
Make some bad jokes, and it's all good. And you could just see he was enjoying this because he's made friends, and it's all going really nicely. And it's new, and he is really inappropriate normally. So
oh, that's hilarious.
It was really nice for him to be that. And so it's the reminder was that, if we can be their safe space, it just felt like a real blessing, a real beautiful space.
And also that it's really hard when you meet new people. Yeah. So he's made some really lovely friends, but in those early stages, you're still kind of scoping each other out, and you're a bit scared to say certain things just in case, and I've seen this with all of my kids, they need that buffer, someone to come back to and just
And he's an introvert, so he's really good at socializing. He's learnt that, and he's very good at it now, and it's draining. It's draining. So it was really lovely little moment.
And how lovely that you didn't suffocate him and go, well, we'll come up and we'll just look around your room and meet all your friends.
No. Yeah, that was nice.
Lovely. So for me, mine was about a conversation I had with the most amazing woman. She has teenagers, and one of them had quite a dramatic accident. She's had a toxic boss who has meant she has actually left her workplace, and the area she lives in, there's been a lot of sirens going around, more police presence. And she dropped these things into the conversation as if they were nothing. They just, we were there for quite a while, but they just kind of, with little things dropped into the river. And every time I thought, gosh, that sounds much bigger than she's saying it is. And she then said that she'd been feeling a bit depressed and bitchy, and she's gone on HRT in the hope that it will help. And, my response was, that's it. It might be menopause and it might be really helpful. But have you also noticed how hard your life has been over the last period of time, and that maybe that's actually having an impact on you physically? And her response was, well, I can't complain. There are other people who have it way worse than me.
That's so
classic response. And it's so interesting because there's an amazing book that I highly recommend by Dr. Edith Eger, which is called The Choice. She survived a concentration camp and witnessed some of the most horrific things. And she talks in it about how there is no measure of suffering.
No.
It's not this person had it way worse than, so my suffering doesn't matter. We all experience things and we all need to acknowledge the impact it's had on us, not so we can wallow in it, but by actually inspecting it and saying, wow, that's tough.
Yeah.
Then we can heal from it and we can move on.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
And there's another book, Gabor Mate, right? Is The Myth of Normal. And these kind of experiences, they're a part of normal life. And any reaction to it is a normal response to difficult circumstances, rather than making it, either belittling it and ignoring it, or making it into be some sort of massive mental health issue.
Absolutely.
It's normal.
You have one of our lovely reviews.
I do, which is very lovely. It's called Huge Help as I Learn to Adapt My Parenting to the Teenage Years. I'm so grateful to Rachel and Susie for their research and sage advice. I routinely listen to the podcast and look forward to new episodes, as well as consulting past ones as I face new stages in my teens' lives. Thank you for presenting thorough investigation and sharing your experiences in such an engaging and accessible way. Love it. Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's really
so
lovely.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so helpful to hear these things, because it makes me think, okay, we're doing something.
It's really lovely.
We're making a difference. Now, are you ready to talk about marriage and divorce?
Oh, yes.
So marriage.com, as I mentioned, that statistic I mentioned earlier on, it's the first 2 years that's the most dangerous in terms of divorces. And then it's actually 5th through to 8th years, with the 7th and 8th being the most perilous.
Yeah.
That's not when you have teenagers.
No, but I wonder, there is an uptake. I think when the teenagers get old and they're more independent, and maybe when they leave home, and then suddenly you looking at your partner going, wow, we've drifted apart, and there's no need, we don't have the same interest.
I completely
anymore.
agree.
I think there is an uptake then as well. I don't know statistics on it.
The statistics I saw said that after the 8th year, it starts to decline.
Yeah.
All the way up to the 15th year, at which point it plateaus, and you've just got consistent rates of people divorcing. But, again, this is just... but I agree. I think it's actually when people think, well, we don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah, and maybe we were just staying together for the kids, and I don't want to spend the next 20 years with you.
Yeah, because our values change and our need... Right, so...
And that can be painful.
And coming back to that Daily Mail article... She claims couples argue more about teenage children than at any other stage. Now, I can see that because it's quite challenging. The thing is, teenagers, the problems can be bigger and more taxing. So there is. This is her claim, and she came up with one example, and it was where this couple were in a shop, and they had their 14-year-old son, and he had his birthday money, and she had said, why don't you, to the husband, go off with the son and he can buy his video game while I just finish the shop. on no account buy Grand Theft Auto because it's really rapey and violent.
So they're prostitutes.
All that. And what did he come back with? Grand Theft Auto. And the father said, look, all his mates have got it. It's not such a big deal. And she said, look, the one thing I said was don't buy this. And it turned into a row. And he said, well, if you feel that strongly about it, then take it back. And she said, fine, I will. But it turned into a big row. That is not your teenager's fault.
No, absolutely. It has nothing to do with the teenager. It's completely their relationship.
I read this and thought, for God's sake. And my husband, I mentioned it to him and he said, oh, if you had told me not to get this, I would walk off with that ringing in my ears. And if I disagreed, I would have had a conversation with you offline. At home.
That's brilliant journalism.
Yeah, well done you. Thank you for that example. Dr. Carl Pickart, Harvard-trained psychologist, said when parents neglect to look after themselves and their marriage, you're much less able to care for your adolescents, and the adults can end up blaming the child.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So
it's not their responsibility.
It's not their responsibility.
But it can absolutely be a catalyst because it's really challenging. But then you can step back and look at the background and what's going on.
And that's absolutely spot on, that one, because Tanith Carey, who wrote the article, but actually has some good suggestions. One of the things she pointed out was spot the proxy battles. Are you feeling irrationally triggered by your partner's parenting? Because actually that might be to do with tensions in your relationship and they're being fought via the children.
It's often to do with sort of control issues, and when we have teenagers, it's very much about, or it can feel like it's very much about control and what are they allowed to do, what are they not allowed to do, all of the things that we discuss every time. And that can feel very difficult to navigate with somebody else if you're not on the same page or you're already triggered by them, It just exacerbates everything.
Yes, and solve your own hang-ups. Yeah. Is the thing your teen doing wrong, or in your eyes wrong, actually linked back to treatment you experienced in your childhood? A bit of self-introspection.
Yeah. And we marry our parents. I'm really sorry that we do, and that feels really weird and awkward. But we don't marry our parents, and we can think, but my partner's nothing to like my parent. But there are elements in our partners that we pick that make us feel like we did when we were kids. That's the thing. It's not that they look like them or they are like them, but there's something in them that makes us feel how we did, that parent made us feel, and that's that we need to look at.
Yes. No, absolutely. I think that's completely spot on.
And that gets massively triggered when we are parenting ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, really, really good point. One of the things is, look, the same rows have been coming up for the last 3 years. So actually you can record your rows. Like, what are we rowing over? Is it always the same
and
thing?
Watch them back in the evening.
And is this fixable, or is this something we fundamentally just don't agree on? And we deserve, everyone in a relationship deserves respect. These are human beings we're dealing with. Whether you've stopped loving your partner or what, you both deserve respect. So this kind of curb your eye rolling and criticism and backbiting, because it doesn't help anybody.
And most relationship problems, like 90% of relationship problems, are to do with communication and how we communicate or how we don't communicate. And so having a look at communication patterns can be absolute game changer.
Yes. So these are all things that could lead you to going, well, maybe we could learn better patterns, or are we actually, what is the foundation our relationship is built on? Because if it's an empty vessel, then it may be that it's time to sort of move on. But try and do some of this work before you decide to divorce, because you're still going to be parents together, and you're still going to have to talk to each other, and you're still going to have to make decisions.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, I think, think, oh, great, it's a fix because it's really difficult, and maybe the marriage is over. And, there are a million reasons. I'm divorced. It's really challenging and really painful, and it's very multi-layered. But you don't get out of it. It's not like a get out of jail card, because you still have to co-parent, and that's really challenging. So if you can learn to communicate, that's really helpful.
No, I mean, that's absolutely key. Like, if we can just look at one thing that you could do before you push the button is that how do we get better at communicating? Because we're going to have to do it.
Super, super challenging. And I think when you're not going through a divorce or you've never been through a divorce, I used to be really smug, why? Oh God, can't they just, get on with it for the sake of the kids? It's so, it's so awful. Blah, blah, blah. And then you're in it and you go, oh my goodness, it's super, super challenging and painful.
Yes.
So, it's
painful. And
really
the pain is the hard thing.
Because it's multi-layered, you're saying goodbye to a family, and the future. And there's so much in it. It's super, super painful for most people. And that's not even including if there's been, betrayal or other issues. So it's not without its challenges, but it's really worth just trying to be as respectful as possible and communicate as cleanly as possible if you can.
Yeah. And it can trigger an existential crisis where you literally like, who am, if I'm not in this marriage and I'm not this person, what now am I?
Yes.
And it may be that one person feels that way and the other person's like, yay, I can carry on. I'm moving this direction. It's brilliant.
Yes.
And that often is the case.
It's really hard.
So what about staying together for the kids?
No.
So my friends actually did the short term.
Judgmental, but
no. My friends did the short term because they had a similar scenario. So they had actually 3 kids who were all going through very important exams.
Yeah.
And I spent some time with the wife, 3 of us women together in a very intense situation for a few days, and she never mentioned it once. Which was amazing. How did you do that?
Yeah.
And suddenly they announced it after the exams were over to the world. And I just went, what? Hang on, what? But there were little signs that had made me very confused about their relationship.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it felt on the inside for those kids.
No, I think what the problem is, and people have to do what feels right for them. And if that works for them, then of course they do that. So I'm not judging anybody for what the choices they make. I just would be concerned possibly that because teenagers have their antennae out all the time and they need
heightened.
Heightened, and they need to what they see and hear and experience has to be in alignment with what they're with all of it. It has to all be in alignment, and when they are seeing things that aren't in alignment, that confuses their antennae, and that goes back onto themselves, and they then start to wonder about their own judgment.
Yes,
and everything feels
a
bit sort of what's that word?
Discombobulated.
Thank you. And out of alignment. And that can really kind of knock them, and they don't quite know why, and something's not quite right, but they don't know what it is. So clean messaging is usually the best, but it can be really difficult. So
I love that. That's so important, because it's this, when you're a teenager, you are trying to work out what you really think of the world and how things work and how your friends work, and if things are slightly off, then you just think it's your
judgment. So you could, mum and dad saying, we're all good, we love, and then they see their body language and it's not how they're talking.
Yes.
They'll be like, whoa, that doesn't match. And they won't be conscious maybe of what it is, but that will go in because they're sponges.
That you pretend to be getting on really, really well. Like, and then as soon as the exams are over, you go, and the kid goes, wait. And then they'll start thinking, well, what else have you lied about?
Exactly that.
Who can I trust?
Yeah, exactly
right?
that.
So it has its problems.
Yeah, it needs to be in alignment. But it's difficult, and people do it for all sorts of reasons. So whatever works, you have to do.
And studies reveal that children who are raised in a 2-person, loving and stable environment show fewer signs of depression, anxiety and defiant behaviour. Who knew, hey? And these children have better academics and develop better capacity for truly intimate relationships, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm bringing this up is that children raised in stressful and conflicted marriages are more stressed, have more defiant behaviour and more problems than children raised in a stable divorced or stable single parent home.
Yeah, because they are, children fundamentally they are competent in the sense, and we talked about this right at the start of the podcast, they're competent in that if something is out of alignment, they make a noise. So go, whoa, hang on, this is a bit weird. What's going on? They don't know it consciously. They probably can't verbalize it. So if they're feeling this mismatch of what's going on, they'll probably play out a bit because they'll be like, whoa, what's going on? I need some attention. I don't quite know why. I just feel it feels funny. So that would possibly be why.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And Christine Northam, a relationships counsellor for Relate, says parents who stay together for the children often don't take into account the model they're presenting to their children. No. So we talk about this a lot. This kind of loveless examples can actually hamper children in their adult relationships because they're forming this is why this teenage years are so important, because they're starting to form an imprint of what is a relationship, what is love, and if what they're living with doesn't really match, it can be very confusing. And also, if people are staying together but they might be having other relationships, then the kids can feel very confused by how this works.
Yeah. I'm sure there are occasions where it does work and it's the best solution, but it's not without its problems, I don't think.
Yeah. So, co-parenting amicably.
Sorry.
After divorce.
Really hard.
That's
totally possible and hard.
That's the kind of nirvana that everyone would like to have happen, but can be incredibly difficult. Yeah. But let's go back. So helping teenagers through this. So what we need to do is like, how do we deal with this? How do we tell teenagers, right? So we've said, okay, we're going to tell the teenagers, and we've decided. And you kind of need to know that, and you need to say it together. And I've had feedback from a teenager who's helped me with this. So I've researched and I've had someone explain things. The worst thing you can do is leave them to work it out for themselves.
Yes.
You do need to, like, if they see the parents treating each other poorly and then they think, well, I think maybe they're going to get divorced. I don't know.
It's terrifying for them because that's rocking their whole world.
Yes. Or I saw my parents treating each other really badly, and I was kind of,
come on.
When's this happening? Yes. It didn't happen. Why is it not happening? What's wrong with them? Why are they not getting divorced? This is awful.
Yes.
Okay. Do it together. Do it calmly. Explain to them explicitly it's not their fault. And when you explain it to the teenager, you need to be prepared to say, you may be feeling all sorts of emotions. Did you understand what we're saying? What are your questions? And you don't have to come up with all the questions now, because they may come in trickles, or you may have a question in the middle of something. At any point, I'm happy to talk about it.
And it's quite often when a marriage breaks down that one person is more upset than the other.
Yes.
Not always.
Yes,
There's
I agree.
a million varieties of why and all of the logistics. But so that can be really difficult if trying to present.
Very painful.
Presenting a face in that place, that's difficult for the teens to watch. But it's, it is what it is, I guess.
But I guess you both have to kind of sit and say, okay, the most important thing at this point is our teenagers. Yes. It's just, can we get to that space? And that, again, is the nirvana. It's not always easy, but it was not easy. No. And the things you want to have ready for that conversation is, will they have to move away from friends and school?
Yes, the logistics.
Are they going to have two homes? Yes. One parent? Well, how is this going to work? They're going to want to know this stuff straight away. What about the finances? Yeah. Does this mean that their allowance is gone? What's happening with Christmas?
Yeah. And with the remembering that for a teenager, the world revolves around them.
Completely around them.
Completely normal. Yes. So they need to know these things, actually.
And things like, don't put them in the middle right away. So let's say you announce that you're going to do this. Don't say, so who do you want to stay with this weekend? No. You have to have this stuff solved beforehand, and then just present it to them and say, so we thought this weekend you'll do this, next weekend, and then we can discuss things. We can discuss it, yes. Exactly. And so you need to parent them still.
And it's possible that they have all sorts of emotional reactions and we take it all very personally sometimes, don't we? And they might be really angry, especially if it's obvious that one person is leaving and the other is staying. They might be really angry with that person, and that's like a really natural reaction. And we have to be really emotionally mature and take that.
Yes.
Or they might be numb, shocked. There could be a million reactions.
And it's really more helpful to them to take the position that it's nobody's specific fault, because what I've learned from relationships through my life is that even when one person has an affair, there's other stuff going on in the marriage. It's really important that they start to understand that there's not just one person to blame in anything.
No, absolutely. Really good point. So even if it is one person leaving or for whatever reason, there's a million reasons as to why the marriage hasn't worked. It's never just one person's fault. Absolutely.
And one of our listeners made a fantastic point, which is, it's probably the first time your kids see you as something more than just being a mum or dad. So I thought, gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because now you're single. It's like you're an atom that has lost an electron, and you're going to be looking around for, they'll think like that.
Yeah. And they do tend to feel concern. And, if one person is moving out, which is often the case, they're going to maybe go from the family home to a tiny little rental bedsit somewhere, possibly, or something equivalent. And they can feel all sorts of feelings for that, worry, concern, feel sorry for them or not, the million reasons, but million feelings, but they're thinking these things.
And just with all sorts of other scenarios, saying to them, it's okay, whatever you're feeling, it's okay.
Yeah.
This is a normal reaction. Yeah. It's, rather than saying, well, can't you just get over it? Or these are things that are very painful.
Yeah, really painful.
So the ways that you
or
can
not, and they might not.
They might just want to get on with their friends.
And that's also cool.
Yes, yes. Dr. Carl Pickart, a Harvard-trained psychologist, says because divorce catches adolescents, the sort of 19 to 13-year-olds in the age of detachment, their common responses are aggressive, pushing against, pulling away from parents, trying to exercise control. The older ones, the 13 to 18-year-olds, tend to understand better what divorce is and they kind of want to move on. They kind of just like, so now what? What's going to happen now?
Yeah.
And
who's going to pick me up tomorrow?
Yeah, you can expect, and they want to, quite often they want to just rely on their friends. They want to go and spend time with their friends. And that's critical. So the other thing is, if you are saying, right, you spend one weekend here, the next weekend there, don't hog all their time.
No.
Because they're going to be like, well, what about my friends?
Yeah, that's really important.
I don't want to have to spend time with my parents just because you've separated.
That's really, really key, actually, because they do really need that. And we suddenly can get a little bit protective of the time we have with our teenagers. It's my time. It's my...
Exactly.
And they're
of course.
Yeah, but I want to hang out with my mates. It's not relevant to them. You're their base.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's tricky if you move away.
Particularly if you move away. Particularly if you... And they may go through grief if they have to move, my goodness, if they have to move schools, if they have to... Anything like that that's disruptive. And the challenge for divorced parents is this working divorce, what they term a working divorce. So you can use technology. The amazing thing now, which I'm sure you didn't have, was there are apps now that you can use, like there's the custody exchange app where you can go, it takes you through all the steps of creating a plan. What things do you need to think about?
Yeah, we did not have that.
You did not have that. And that's actually just starting from ground zero, thinking, well, what am I supposed to consider?
Yeah.
That can really help.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And we do need to also, if you're going to separate, you've got to accept that the person who is in the other house, the other parent, is going to have their own rules.
Yes.
And that's hard because you have that. You and your ex have different rules and you're amazing because you just say, well, that's how it works in his house. Yeah. You can have conversations about it.
It has to be. And you have to get really good at picking your battles.
Yeah.
It depends on the communication, but you can get to the point where you have to, let everything go, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Questions teens will internalize potentially about divorce. Things like, how can parents who commit to get married choose not to stay married? If the commitment to marriage is made to be broken, then what other commitments can you trust?
Yeah.
It can shake their sense of what does it mean to commit to somebody?
And you can, I remember because mine were very little when I got divorced, so it's very different, but they go through developmental stages where they question everything once more and then it looks a bit different. So you have the conversation again. And I remember once when they were younger, does that, that you can stop loving, the parents can stop loving each other. Does that mean you can stop loving us?
Absolutely. Another one, yes.
And it's like explaining, no, the love I have for you is very different. That's kind of unconditional and that can never be broken.
Yes.
This is conditional and it did get broken. That just explaining that's different.
Spot on. And that actually happened with my little bonus daughter when she was little. And she kept saying, you're not going to marry that woman, are you? And I picked her up one day and I said, what? I put her on my lap and said, what, we haven't talked about this. We're not talking about marriage. What's the problem? And she said, well, because if he marries you, then he will stop loving me.
Oh, bless.
And it was so interesting because, these are emotions and thoughts that kids can have. Yeah. That's what I said to her. I said, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Your daddy can never stop loving you. He's your daddy.
And also you can begin to teach them about this, what I find is a really beautiful way of looking at the world in general, but love as well, is abundance and scarcity. So that there's not a finite amount of love. So if I give you a portion, that doesn't mean there's only so much left. It's the more love there is, the more love there is.
Yes.
That it grows.
Yes.
And teenagers get that.
Yeah. And I love that way. We don't talk about love enough, the beautiful things about life. It's too much sort of cynicism. And interestingly, I think, there is a mention for the more adult children, so 18 years and up. Be careful be careful, because there is a tendency, says Angarad Rudkin, who's a clinical psychologist, that we think they are more capable than they are. Don't ever overestimate their maturity. And they can look back and feel like they were living a lie that whole time. And also, parents sometimes can lean on them. Don't lean on, they still need
really
you as a parent.
Point. And we tend to think, well, they're 18, they're adults now, and we can kind of see, now I can tell you these things.
Yeah. God.
Yeah, no, they will look back and wonder what on earth happened.
They need you to still be their parent.
Yeah.
And that's the same with the boundaries. You need to still keep these things in place. You're still their parent, whatever happens. One of the interesting things that I thought it worth mentioning was we have a listener who has lived this way. And also there's a social media couple. She's called Mother Pucker. Mm-hmm. And they have gone through something called nesting. Now, this is only for the wealthy, I'm sure. But what happened with our listener was they started out with a traditional separation, and they discovered that the logistics were really difficult because there's this whole moving stuff from one place to the next, or you have to buy some, both things, but it's still difficult. And I've seen teenagers talking about, when they look back, having to go from one house to the next and take all their stuff, and it's stressful. So what they did was they actually kept the home, and each adult moved out for a week. So and they got 2 small flats, bedsit sort of things, which is really hard as an adult, but they look back and say we didn't regret it at all.
Amazing.
It was really great because
that work. It's amazing.
Yes, because we provided stability for the children, and we were the people disrupted because we were the people who had made this decision. And they said, things like holidays were treated with flexibility. They really were comfortable talking about how do we focus on making sure our children's lives work well.
It's amazing. If you can make that work, it's amazing. I'm sure there are real problems with it. If it sounds really challenging, but
I think as an adult, you can't move on. Like, you can't having another relationship when that's happened, and while you're still nesting. I think if I met a man who was doing that, I probably wouldn't want to be in a relationship with him, because I would find that very difficult if he was away every other week. And I, and the whole point with that was that they're not supposed to invite their new partners to their home because it's the children's,
it's very
but
tricky.
that's very selfless and an amazing way of doing it.
And maybe it also, the kids think the world revolves around, I don't know if they do anyway, don't they? I don't know. Challenging. And if that works for you, brilliant.
Finances do become an issue. And again, really important not to mention to the child, can you ask such and such for... Do not ever involve them in any of this. Again, use an app.
Dad's got loads of money, or Mum's got loads of money. Why doesn't she pay for that?
No. Have that conversation with them.
It's really tempting, but don't have it. And also, I think another thing is there is, so many people get divorced. It's really normal and common that it also giving the idea that, yes, it's really painful, it's really difficult, depending on how the teen reacts, but it also doesn't have to be the end of the world. We can also give that impression that, we're going to be all right, guys. That's really important, that it's, it's not the end of the world.
And that will help them frame it. Because when they can have a conversation with themselves and saying, okay, so I've got 2 parents now who aren't together, but now I've got 2 families I can spend time with, or I've got,
And maybe that transition takes time, and maybe it's really painful for a while, and you've got to get used to it. And that's like there's a grief in it. There's a mourning time because it's different and it's painful, and we'll be okay at the other end.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, it's the adult's responsibility to go out of their way to make contact with the teenager and stay in contact, not the teenagers.
With bells on.
So we really have to be conscious that if you want to spend time with them, you don't blame your partner. You have to be the person who will make that effort. And it can be very difficult because there are partners who block.
Yes.
It's challenging.
100%.
But try and keep those arguments away from the teenager.
Or the teen gets cross and goes, I don't want to see you.
I don't want to see you,
And that's fine. You have to respect that and then go, but I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here.
Keep messaging. Keep saying, I'm here when you want to talk to me. I'm sorry you're hurting. Just keep going at it because it's worth it.
And important for them as well.
Important. They need both parents. So a special thanks to everyone who contributed to this episode. I hope it's helped to guide you through the maze of marital breakdown and beyond. And if you have any feedback, you can reach us at teenagersuntangled@gmail.com. Hit the follow button on your app, give us some stars, or even leave a review. Da, da, da. You can find more on the website at www.teenagersuntangled.com. And we're on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Susie's got a separate Instagram account, and she puts lots of really good things.
Yes.
Like she writes a blog.
Find me there.
She's got what's your website?
Our website is www.amindfullife.co.uk, and you can find links to all of my social media, which I'm a little bit sporadic on, but I do put things on.
She does put things on, and
Instagram
her blog's worth
probably
reading. Instagram's a good one for her, or LinkedIn.
Or LinkedIn, yeah. Or you can book a free chat with me.
Book a free chat. What's not to like? Don't just keep booking the free chats, though.
No, you get one.
I feel like I need to call you out. Go, hi, Susie.
You're very welcome.
Right, that's it for now.
Bye-bye for now.